What's up guys, Zim's Jeep here. In today's video I'm going to go over how I installed and hooked up my new 60-gallon air compressor. Before we get started, just wanted to let you know I'm going to be posting a bunch of links down in the description for all the parts and accessories I use for this install, so if you want to do a setup similar to mine, you can get a little more information about them or you can even purchase them. So as you can see, this is a dewalt 60-gallon air compressor. Here's the part number for it if you're interested. And over on the other side here, a couple more of the specs. Again, it's 60-gallon capacity tank. It has 155 psi max working pressure, and it delivers 11.5 SCFM. So real quickly, the reason why I went with the dewalt over some of the other brands that are out there, this was on sale Black Friday this past year. I think it was around $150 off. I also had a Lowe's 10% off coupon, and I also had a couple gift cards that I wanted to use up for Lowe's. So it brought the price down considerably. I think out of pocket I wound up only paying around $200 for this. Now if you're in the market for this, I'm sure you've been doing some research. You'll probably see that most of the 60-gallon air compressors out there that are popular, like the Cobalt, the Husky, I think the Central Pneumatic from Harbor Freight, and even some of the other ones that Northern Tool sells, they're all pretty much the same. I think they're probably all made in the same factory somewhere, and then when they're all completed and assembled, they're just painted specially and badged with whatever brand they're going to be. But for the most part, they're all the same. They all have the same specs, so I guess you can't really go wrong with any one that you pick. So a few years back, I designed and finished the basement in our house myself, and I incorporated this closet here in the corner for two reasons. Main reason why I built this was to get access to the sewer trap for the house, alright? And you can see down here, originally I had this wall framed back around this area here. Then the idea popped in my head one night that this would be a great location to install a compressor for my shop. So what I did was I just, built the wall back about another foot. That way I have enough room to get in here and do work to that if I have to, and even service the compressor. Primary reason I went and installed the compressor down here is because I have a one-car garage that I use as my shop. And space is at a premium in there. I wasn't going to have a location that I could dedicate just for this. I'd have to relocate another piece of equipment, and something I really didn't want to do. Now a couple new issues arise when you install the compressor in a remote location, that being the air distribution and the power. So I wanted this install to be done in a way where I didn't have to run back and forth from the garage down to the basement whenever I wanted to use this. So let me show you now how I set this up. We'll go over the electric first. Alright, real quick before we get to the electric, I wanted to show you how I mounted it to the slab down here. I'm going to insert a video that goes over the parts that I use for this. Basically, you got to make sure that you use these pads underneath the feet of this. You don't want to mount the compressor directly to the slab. When it's running, it can vibrate around. You want to reduce all that vibration as much as possible, and that's the function of these. So here's a little more information about them. Alright, so most of the vertical air compressor manufacturers recommend that you use these. These are called anti-vibration pads. You put these under the feet of the compressor when mounting it to the floor. These are around $15 or $16 on Amazon for a set of 4. I'll put a link down in the description if you're interested in purchasing them. And it seems like the method of choice in terms of hardware is to use a wedge anchor. These are made by Redhead. I got these in Home Depot. 3/8 of an inch by 5 inches long. So obviously I have to drill a 3/8 inch diameter hole, at least 5 inches long in the slab. Alright, so up in my garage I have a 50 amp sub panel. So what I did was, I'll show you this part after I show you this down here, but essentially there's a disconnect up in the garage. And then I have a piece of 10-2 Romex that feeds down this piece of plastic conduit, and I just did that to protect it, down to a box where I have a 240 volt 30 amp twist lock receptacle installed. Alright, and obviously a twist lock plug that goes into that. Now the reason why I went with installing a receptacle as opposed to, say, installing a whip and hardwiring the compressor right to that, I wanted a point of disconnect down here where I could shut power off to this to do work if I ever wanted to, let's say to service the motor or the pump. I didn't want to have to run back and forth between here and the garage to have to shut the electric off. So that's the reason why I did that. Couple of side notes. Some guys might say that you can't install Romex and conduit. That is completely wrong. the NEC actually recommends that you sleeve Romex wherever it is subject to damage, which would be a case like this. Alright, so that is good practice. Something you want to do. Now you're going to see some discrepancy online with the 60-gallon compressors, whether you should install a 20 amp or a 30 amp circuit. And my piece of advice, if you have a 20 amp circuit already available, 240 volts that you can use, by all means go ahead and do it. I'm sure you wouldn't have a problem. If you're going to be rewiring a circuit from your panel, go ahead and install the 30 amp circuit. This draws about 17 amps when it's running, which obviously would work with the 20 amp circuit. Only problem is the NEC recommends something called the 20% rule, where you're not supposed to exceed a certain threshold of amperage draw on a circuit, and this would exceed that, which is the reason why I decided to go with 30 amps. And just a little tip for you guys, whenever you're going to be mounting conduit or pipe to a concrete wall, it's always best to install a piece of plywood as a backer board. Makes it a little easier to go ahead and put your clips in and your pipe straps. So this is just a 3/4 piece of plywood, and what I went ahead and did was use my ram set, and I believe those are 1¼ inch nails that I used to secure it to the wall. If you don't have a ram set, of course you can go ahead and drill it and put concrete anchors and screws in there as well. Two side notes here, guys. With the disconnect up in the garage, you're going to leave the factory switch on the compressor in the auto position. And you might have noticed this white piece of PVC on the wall over here marked condensate. That has nothing to do with the compressor setup. There's another video on my channel about installing a dehumidifier condensate pump. That's what the function of this pipe is. So you can check that out as well if you want. I'll put a link down in the description if you're interested. One other thing I wanted to mention, I haven't had any problems with this closet getting too hot when the compressor's running, and I think that's mainly because of the way I frame the basement walls. If you look here, here's the finished part of the basement framing. Here's my foundation wall, so I got a good foot in between both, and that goes around the whole outside perimeter of the basement. On the other side is the boiler room, which this actually connects to, and there's a window in there that I keep cracked open throughout the year just to get fresh air over to the boiler. So I think that's why I haven't had any issues with that. But if you are considering constructing a closet for your compressor, you might want to think about a way to get fresh air into there so you don't have any problems with overheating as well. Alright guys, so we're back up here now in the garage, and just to give you a perspective of where we are in relation to the compressor, that room is down in the basement right around here. So this is the corner of the house, and that closet is framed out like this, okay? So basically what I did is I cut an access hole here in the drywall that allowed me to drill down through the bottom plate of the wall, get that piece of Romex up inside the wall, and it comes in the back of this disconnect box. This is a 30 amp 240 volt disconnect. It actually has 2 cartridge fuses in here as well, so we're double protected. The power then comes from through this piece of pipe here and from this double pole 30. So that's what I mean by double protected. I have the double pole 30 here and the cartridge fuses as well. Okay. And again, the whole idea about having the disconnect up here is so that when I want air, I don't need to run down to the basement to turn it on from that location. I could do everything from right up here. Okay. So I'll turn it on. I don't know if you could hear that. It's not that loud from up here, which is good. And again, it's just real convenient having everything right here and not having to run down to the basement. Alright, so I went ahead and purchased the rapidair Max Line 3/4 inch kit to plumb the compressor from the basement up to the garage. I read a lot about this online, did some research, got pretty good reviews, and it looked easy enough to use. It's a little bit pricey. This kit normally sells somewhere between $140 and $160. And then, you know, if you have to, you're going to have to buy a couple other pieces. I needed a couple more elbows and fittings to make all this work. These cost anywhere between $10 and $15 depending on where you buy them. I'd like to see the kit be a little less expensive. They'd probably sell a lot more. But I did price out some black pipe from Home Depot and Lowe's, and that's gone up in price too. So to do it all in black pipe maybe would have cost me, I don't know, $50 less than what this kit cost. So all in all, it's a pretty good value, and looks like this is a lot easier to get airtight without any leaks than, let's say, using black pipe. Alright, so I'm not going to get too in depth with this system and what comes with it. There's a lot of other reviews online about it, but basically you get 3 distribution blocks where you can set up air stations in your shop. You get a bunch of fittings and valves. These are drain valves for the bottom of these fittings. And they also give you an assortment of compression fittings as well. T's, straight connectors for, I guess, connecting to a regulator. And they give you a tool for cutting it. I believe there's a reamer in there somewhere too, and they give you a bag of pipe hangers also for the wall. Alright, let me show you guys now the piping for the air on this. The compressor tank has a 3/4 female fitting on it. So I have a 3/4 pipe nipple here. That goes to a 3/4 ball valve. You always want to install a ball valve real close to your tank so you can isolate the piping from the tank if you ever have a problem or want to do service on the system. That way you don't have to drain the tank down. Alright, real important step here too. You never want to connect your hard plumbing directly to your tank. The reason for that is that the compressor vibrates around when it's running, and you don't want those vibrations transmitted over to your piping. Alright, so what the hose does is acts as an isolation point between the piping and the compressor. Alright, so this is just a 1/2 inch hose here, 3 feet long. Again, I'll put a link down in the description where you can purchase one of these. The only negative thing about this is 1/2 inch, and the whole system other than this is 3/4. But I had a real hard time online finding a 3/4 inch whip hose. They're around $70 or $80. I found a couple other places that were going to custom make it for me, and it was also expensive. So, like I said, one little downside, but you really don't need 3/4 inch supply for things I'm going to be doing in terms of residential use. And to be honest with you, the inside diameter of this 1/2 inch hose is almost the same as the inside diameter of the tubing that came with this kit. So it's really not that much of a negative. Over here on the wall, this is one of the distribution blocks that comes with the rapidair max line system. So usually you'd have this on the back end of the system with an air chuck on it for your tools. What I use this for is I backfed it and use it as a point from my flexible hose to the hard line of the kit. I went ahead and removed the plug here so you can see this a little better. The nice thing about this is that I have this, that's about a 5 or 6 foot vertical piece of piping, and on the bottom here this kit comes with these drain valves. So I'm hoping that this acts as like a drip leg for the system, and any moisture that I get in the piping or in the tank will accumulate in here. Is I can come down here every once in a while and open this valve up and drain all the water out. Now of course the tank itself has a valve on the bottom to drain that section, but you also want to have means for draining your piping as well. So like I said, that's a nice feature that they include on this kit. One other thing I wanted to show you to make sure you don't forget, make sure you seal up all the holes and penetrations you make out to your garage. You don't want any fumes from your cars getting into your living space or your house. So I got to seal up that hole there around that pipe, and also that piece of conduit with the wire coming through it. You could use duct seal for this. That's pretty easy to apply, and you could take it off if need be in the future if you need to gain access to those holes again to run something else. Alright guys, so back up here in the garage now again. This is where the air comes through the wall from the basement. So I have a 3/4 elbow here. The elbow I had to buy separate. They don't include elbows with the kit. Alright, and what I basically did is I flexed the line up and over to here into a combination filter dryer and pressure regulator. Okay, again, could do everything from right up here in the garage. I can regulate the pressure from up in here and empty out the filter dryer as well. Okay, only thing at this point that I would do different, I should probably have a shutoff valve somewhere from between this point and the regulator, just so I can isolate the system if something was to go wrong, if I want to work on it. Okay, so 2 compression fittings on either end of this. Again, I'll put links to all the parts I use for this down in the description. Okay, so from here, goes out, goes to a T, goes down to one of these distribution blocks where I have a air fitting attached. All right, and from here it just goes up and over the top of the garage door, along the ceiling up there and down. And let me get over here. I have another one of those air station blocks that comes with the kit over here, where I can hook up this coiled hose that I have or my air hose reel. Alright guys, so to wrap this up, would I buy this Rapidair Max Line set again? Yes, absolutely. It's a definite time saver as opposed to running this all with black iron pipe. There is a couple negatives about it. They're minor, but I'm just going to let you know what they are in case you're considering this. Okay, the kit itself is expensive. It's around $150 for the piping, the 3 air stations, and again that comes with tees and a couple other compression fittings as well. Alright, if you compare that to say doing this with black pipe, it's a little bit more. Black pipe and all the fittings, they can add up quick depending on how elaborate your system's going to be. It was a little difficult to get it into place in terms of being able to get it up the wall here across the top of the garage door and down this side and having this coil attached to one end. So the idea obviously is to minimize the amount of fittings you're going to need, which means you can't cut it before you put it up on the wall. So think of it this way. I had a lot of these bends already done on the pipe with this thing hanging off one end. It was a little difficult to get it over the top of the garage door rails. I was like knocking everything off my shelves in here. It was a little bit of a pain in the ass. Again, a minor complaint, but something to think about. One other thing in terms of getting it into place and making it look nice. I saw some guys, they designed and built this pipe straightener for this to get the pipe nice and straight on the wall. I'm going to tell you, you don't need something like that. What I did was I installed all the clips first on the wall and I made sure they're all perfectly straight. I think I installed them like 3/4 of an inch down off the ceiling, and I made sure each one of those was in the same location. Once you do that and you start snapping the pipe into place, it pretty much starts to straighten out itself. I think I did every other stud in some of these spots, so that's 32 inches in between them. And then I got them in the corners a little bit closer just to hold it in place. So you don't need that pipe straightener. You'll be able to get the pipe pretty straight on your own doing it the way I just described. Okay, in terms of doing the 90s, so doing the bends in the corners and up here, over in this spot, and then I have another one up here. I really wanted those to look nice as well, and what I did is I used my EMT pipe bender to do that. So this is a 3/4 inch pipe bender, and the tubing or the pipe fits perfectly into this, and basically you use this the same way you'd use it on a piece of EMT for this, and you'll get pretty good results. So that's just a little tip that I can give you that makes installing this a little bit easier. So that's about it, guys. I hope that you found this video informative. If you got any questions, post them in the comments section. If you like what you saw, I'd appreciate if you give the video a thumbs up. And again, I'll have links down in the description where you can do a little more research on your own or purchase the parts that I use for this install. And as always, thank you for watching.